Have you ever wondered if your relationship struggles are normal? Or maybe you have wished you could just ask advice from a relationship expert. Or better yet, how about two experts? Well, I'm happy to tell you, you are in the right place. I am Dr. Morgan Cutlip.
And I am Dr. John Van Epp. Morgan and I are both PhDs in psychology, relationship experts, authors, relationship course creators, and a father-daughter team who will bring our educational background, clinical experience, and research knowledge to real relationship concerns and challenges shared by our guests.
Welcome to the Love Thanks podcast, where we hope to empower you to better engage both your heart and your head in relationships so you can follow your heart without losing your mind. Let's get started.
Well, this is going to be a unique podcast because we're just going to tell you our story. So obviously, Morgan and I are related. I'm her father and she's my daughter. And I actually have two daughters. Morgan has a younger sister, and her mom, Shirley, and I this summer will have been married 43 years. So it's been together a long time. And so I just think our story, Dr. Morgan and Dr. John, our story has to be intertwined with our family and what it was like for you growing up in our family and your experiences with me as a father when you were just a little girl. I think back to kind of an infamous experience when you were, I want to say you were just like 6 or 7 years old. You were pretty young. I think you were right around maybe first grade. And I picked you up after an evening counseling session. I had a private practice at that time. And I think I was frustrated and you're in the car. And I just was bemoaning the fact that some people that I counseled were in a relationship with a partner. They weren't married, but a relationship with a partner that they just had blind spots to. You know, they didn't see the issues. And I think I made some comment like, you could figure out the problems of that partner quicker than my adult client.
I didn't know this is how this began.
That's how it began.
I didn't know this.
I was just kind of like, I wasn't revealing any confidential stuff. Okay. So I was being appropriate, but I was just like talking out loud. I wasn't really even talking to you. And, but you were listening and your response was, let me try. I mean, you like took the challenge. So I was like,
sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could probably finish the story at that point.
I mean, I don't remember it beginning that way. I mean, I'm having all these thoughts pop in my head. One of them is I narrate my frustrations as an adult now, and I'm thinking, oh, that's where I got that from. You got in the car and you just talk it out. That's how I'm the same way. I mean, it is a formative memory for me, this experience with you and us being in the car. I don't remember that evening, but I just remember loving that game. It became a game for me. Give me a case.
Well, that's how it happened. I'll finish real quickly. So I told you just like, she's in a relationship with a guy, and I'll tell you something about his family growing up when he was a kid, and you tell me how he treats her. So I said, he had a real angry father that was mean to when this guy was a boy. His father was mean to his mother. And then you were just like, well, he's going to be mean to his girlfriend or something. I mean, you just said it right away. And I go like that, the old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree is an old saying that, a lot of how we are raised in our families becomes a bit imprinted on us, and we tend to repeat it. Not always, obviously. A lot of people work hard to change those things, but you better see some evidence that they worked hard to change it. That's the key. So then at that point, we're driving in silence, okay? So you did it. You solved it. You proved my point. And you said, give me another one. And you wanted another case example. And that's how it became a game, is that you asked for the repeats.
I believe it. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I would still enjoy that game, actually.
You live in that game.
I live the game. It's my most favorite. I know I did a podcast interview once and somebody was like, why do you do what you do? And I told that story and I was like, I really like thinking things through and trying to find the solutions and connect the dots. And he's like, and I'm sure you like helping people. And I was like, of course. But the main thing that came in my head was, I like that. I like that piece of it, that figuring it out.
I always thought that, coaching, therapy, this whole arena of psychology and applied psychology, meaning applying it to truly helping people grow in relationships or change, was really a mixture of an architect, because you are designing structures to help give definition to people in the invisible. You're making the invisible visible with these kind of architectural structures. And an artist, where you are kind of like, something just got thrown up on the from the palette up onto the canvas. How do we make something beautiful out of those colors? And so you are restructuring, you're designing the colors of life that have happened in people's worlds and reframing them to help them to live with them. And then in a lot of ways, a detective. So a mixture where you're now playing a little bit of that. And I think you love, actually, you're a phenomenal artist. I think you could have been an architect if you had studied that, certainly. And you're an amazing learner. You learn so quickly, and you love figuring things out. You always have.
It's funny. I just got Effie these books, and they were called 2-Minute Mysteries. And I remember them when I was a kid reading them, which is like gives you a case. It's the same thing. Gives you a case, and then you have to kind of construct what went wrong and what happened and all the things. So I have this other memory of kind of our relationship when I was younger, which was going to school with you. I went to school with you a number of times when you were working on your doctorate. And but this one of, I think there were like those 2-way mirrors. I think you were practicing I went to be given an IQ test, and I think I think that you did experiments on me is what I'm coming to terms with. I'm like recreating these memories, but I think I did an IQ test, and then you were giving an IQ test, and there was this 2-way mirror.
So we switched kids.
You switched kids.
I gave the IQ test to one of my colleagues, son or daughter, I don't remember.
Who won? No, I'm just joking.
And they gave the IQ test to you, but we got to watch our own children take the IQ test through that mirror, that 2-way mirror.
This is the part that is, I do remember taking the test, actually. I have these, like putting the horse together. But I also remember drawing. You taught me how to draw cubes. I was little. Do you know, like 3-dimensional cubes, and there was a dry erase board, and I was just waiting for you to finish testing this kid. I'm out there drawing these cubes, and I remember like this other classmates of yours were like, I think that's rather young skill for that age. And they were like analyzing it. And I was thinking, well, yeah, because my dad taught me. And you also would teach us this thing with the water, right? Volume transferring, how it can be tall and skinny and short and fat. But it's actually kind of the same amount of water. And I look back at all these things. I'm like, he was testing out developmental theory on my sister and me, I think.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. So, the theory of Piaget, Jean Piaget, right? Yeah. Was that, there's different stages of, cognitive learning. So, and that you can learn the skill one stage ahead of where you are, but probably not two. So whatever is, at the 5-year-old stage of cognitive development, the 6 or 7-year-old, whatever is the next stage, whatever those tasks are for the next stage. But if you get to the 9 or 10, that's probably pretty unlikely. So I wanted to prove that. And volume, right? Volume like
was one of them.
Volume was one of them. That was one of the tasks. And I was teaching it to you, and it was 2 stages ahead of you. So I was trying to disprove
to disprove his theory.
I wanted to see if you could understand that the same amount of water fit in the skinny glasses and the fat glass, right? So the same volume with different shapes. And so
Yeah.
volumes and shapes are one of the tasks. Oh, that's funny that you remember that.
I
That was,
remember it. I remember
we were
you doing
pretty
it with
young.
Jessica too. I remember
Mhm.
you doing it with her.
I
And
didn't hook up
and
any
as
probes or nothing
yeah,
like
no
that.
electro. You
It
didn't do
was all fun and
Milgram's experiment.
it was all fun and games.
I mean, well, I feel like for me as a parent now, I've thought about trying to teach that to the kids. And the thing that really baffles me is how you found the right glasses to show it to us.
I don't remember.
Because it's not easy. I also have a memory. So I don't know if people know this, but you got your doctorate from Akron, and I also got my doctorate from Akron, and I have a
From the
very
exact same program, by the
the
way.
exact same program.
Yeah, and
And
you
I don't
were,
think they
just so you
knew
know,
that when they got in, though. I'm always like, did they? No, but
no, they didn't know
they
that. And
didn't know.
you were the first, but I think you asked, but you were the first second generation,
Hmm.
to graduate from that program. So in other words, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So, well, I remember going with you one night because I remember, you know, those doctor kits. I had a doctor kit. It was a plastic briefcase. They're not like they are now. And I filled it with candy hearts and writing stuff and all I played office all the time, so my office supplies. And I remember that night really vividly going to class with you. I think we ate in the cafeteria, which was really cool, and probably I got candy from the store, which was really cool. And sitting in the class, and it was vocational psychology. And I can't remember. Oof, now I'm on the spot. I can't remember the model she was drawing, but it was a theory. She was drawing up on the board the circles, and I remember drawing it too. I was taking notes in your class, and I don't know, you would probably know better how old I was. But the wildest part is that fast forward whatever number of years, I have that same professor in her last year of teaching for vocational psychology, and I'm taking notes on the same stinking model. The same one. Like,
Which tells you a couple different things,
that vocational psychology hasn't changed.
hasn't changed much. And that prof didn't ever have to, like, once they got their notes down, 20 years later, they didn't have to worry about changing them out. That's a sad thing. But I think several things. I think that you became a lover of learning. I was always a lover of learning. And I
Mhm.
think that was contagious to you and to your sister. I think you both.
Mhm.
She too did a day with dad at PhD classes once a semester. And she was obviously younger than you. So
Mhm.
I can remember laying a blanket out at a 3 hour practicum course, and where everybody just kind of talked, laying a
Can't believe
blanket
they
out
let you bring
and
us.
putting Jessica down on a blanket for I mean, we had breaks, but 3 hours, she just played and was a great little kid. So you too learned a lot about being around adults, about loving learning, about the university can be a place where you own it. You go to the
Mhm.
library, you find it, you search it out. It's not where you're spoon fed. It's where
Mm.
you go to get what you need and want. And that
Oh,
was, I think
yeah.
those were always really good kind of like things that happened. And we always started, we would arrive at the university, if you remember, and we'd go into they had like a little shop, and
Oh,
they
yeah,
had
I
they had
remember
all
that
these
well.
candy. And so it was like, fill your backpack with all the candy that you're going to
Mhm.
be consuming through the day.
Yes. But
So
I
there was
remember now
a
that you're
lot of fun.
saying it was tons of fun going to the library with you, which is not how universities work that much anymore, but having to go to the microfilm, and you would give me
Hmm.
I mean, when I got older, I remember helping you make copies and find articles. Am I on your dissertation? I remember doing that together in the library. It was a lot of fun. Tell the story of how, because you had a practice for around 25 years, a private practice after you got your doctorate, and even a little before when you were in training and all those things. But how did you transition out of that into writing
Yeah.
courses? Because
So this would have been so if we get the right time frame. So you graduated in 2000 from high school, right?
Mhm.
And so it was right around 97, 96, 97. So I was at that time, so this would have been your freshman year of high school, thereabouts.
Mhm.
Um, I was also teaching in marriage and family coursework in a graduate program, not at that university, but actually at a seminary. And so I was teaching marriage and family coursework, and I was already about 10 plus 12 years into the counseling practice. And I just really was longing for prevention. It seemed like so many things that people struggled with, particularly in relationships, they could have avoided or done, if they just would have made some decisions differently upstream. And so that was really when I put together the How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk or Jerkette content, which I organized hundreds of research studies. And I can remember bringing them home, like printing them out, bringing them home. And you probably went with the library and started helping me gather some
Mhm.
of these and laying them all over the living room floor to try to create major categories of these studies. And what these studies were about were simply what before marriage, so that's a pre-marriage, predicts the quality of marriage after people get married. So, like if you're dating somebody, you're getting to know them, what do you need to get to know about them that's going to
Mhm.
foreshadow what they're going to be like 10 years later in a marriage? And I thought these are really interesting studies. Nobody really organized them, put them together, and given them to singles. So that's what I was doing right there in the mid 90s. And I also used this relationship attachment model as a theoretical model I developed about 10 years earlier. So that was a huge transition point for me because
And how did
that
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but you developed that model, and I mean, the model is the crux of all of
all
your
of the
programs,
programs.
all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, you developed that in the 80s. How did that
Yeah, so
come about for you?
I had started my PhD, and it really was not. But I truly loved relationship theory, and I, I did not get accepted. Here's true confession. The first
True
time I
confession.
applied for my PhD program, I was rejected. Very, very much a dark moment. Made me feel a little better. They said they accepted 7 people out of 100 and some, and so I was like,
Yeah.
well, okay, so I'm not like um, the only one that got rejected. But when I went to them and asked, what was the reason that I wasn't accepted, there were 2 reasons. One was I had somebody write like a letter of recommendation, and they just went on and on and on about all the things that I've been doing. And it said, "You're way too busy. This letter of recommendation says you're too busy." And I was like, well, that backfired. The other thing they said was, you talked so much about relationships that we think that maybe you should consider the marriage and family track, not
Mm.
this counseling psychology track. And so they tried to push me toward a different program. So I'm just saying that as I always loved relationship theory and relationship research, and just felt like relationships are so much a part of what life is all about.
Mhm.
And so when I did get into the program, and I was starting my PhD, I was also working in a clinic, and I was trying to draw on paper a visual to help people understand what is going on in this invisible world of their relationship, and how they only know somebody here, but they trust them way up here. So I was showing like the differentiation between constructs of
Mhm.
trust, knowing, and then like how dependent they were, like meeting needs, or how, and like maybe somebody that they were heavily trusting was not committed to them at all, had like no commitment. And so I, all of a sudden, I'm looking at this paper and I'm realizing I just defined 5 areas of relationships. They're constructs, they're factors of relationships that are pretty universal. These exist in
Mhm.
every relationship. And so that's called armchair theory. But I then took that right into my academic kind of studies, and I began really trying to see, who else has ever looked at these 5 areas, and nobody had ever put them together.
Mm-mm.
And so I put them together, but there was a tremendous amount of theory and research on each one individually. So I
Mhm.
compiled it all, and I said, hey, these are not just individual factors; they're parts of a whole, and the whole is what we call relationship.
Well, yeah, there's a ton on it because I did my dissertation eventually on the relationship attachment model, and so got to go back into it and find the latest research on all of it, and it's amazing. I don't know if I actually knew that you sketched it during a session.
The person I sketched it with, I still have contact periodically with. About 20 years after I sketched it, she gave me the sketching, but I don't know where it is anymore,
Oh, that's
which
so
is really
cool. You should have
sad. But
framed it.
I know,
Ah, what a missed opportunity.
I
I
know.
mean,
Oh well.
well, I mean, you're talking about having something that provides definition to our invisible experiences. And I feel like that's an undercurrent in the way both of us approach things is how do we take something that feels really confusing and invisible and create definition and structure around. There's the architect piece structure to that.
Well,
So
for so
go ahead.
long, from that point on, really from around 2000, 2001 on, the world of writing relationship programs, training people to teach them, writing workbooks, this just started escalating with hyper speed. And I
Mhm.
ended up closing the practice. You did a master's, you did your PhD, and then you came pretty much full blown involved. So
Mhm.
from your early childhood involvement, it just evolved. Really, it never really had a starting point.
That's what it's yeah, I get asked a lot, how did you begin working with your dad or how did your career begin? And it's always a really difficult thing for me to articulate because it feels like there was no starting point. It feels like it was always kind of part of it. I mean, I checked out a book on Freud in like second grade from our school library, and then I know you brought me into one of your classes and let me do a presentation on him for everybody. Which I don't know how I had the guts to do that, but it feels like to say I'm a product. My profession is a product of my upbringing is like the biggest understatement ever because I just lived it. I feel like I
I think
lived
it's
it
better to
along.
say it's part of the fabric of your upbringing.
It is.
It's all the
Yeah.
threads of what you say and teach. And this is why, I remember when you were doing your PhD that your profs were like blown away that you articulated things, but you didn't use the right terms.
Oh, I
But the
got well, I had a ugh, because I had a supervisor who was like, "One thing, you need to use the proper terminology, but you very excellent description of all the concepts. You get them." And I got the opposite feedback from my professors, but I never understood that to be true. But it's because I've lived it
mm,
my whole
and
life.
and so I'm going to kind of turn it to you because if we just like fast forward and we get into around 2015, you and I were like, we have got to take all these courses that I've developed that people
Mhm.
teach, and we've
Mhm.
got to create online versions. We got to create what we ended up creating, which was, a plug and play version, even to use in faith settings like churches and things. We created that version, but we've created a ton of online at home end user versions, and your whole entrance into the Instagram world and all that really was a lot of your story where you just kind of started blossoming out.
I feel like we grew again, I grew up sort of in the profession. And that's one of the greatest gifts. And I think it's been a bit of a challenge for me. I think about, I remember in undergrad, we had a course where we had to develop a course. And I think I developed an abstinence course was like I think I called it Don't Get Screwed, which is kind of hilarious. But um,
You did. I
I
remember
think I
it.
did. And it was hard for me to step out of what I already knew from you. It's hard for me to step out of what I've grown up talking about and reading about and having watching you speak about. And I think that I've been blessed with all of your wisdom and knowledge. And then there was this part of me that had to sort of get over my own worry that maybe, do I have things to also say that are in the same thread as my dad, but my own, or a little bit, can I carve out my own niche? And I think that that moved alongside of this need for our work to have formats that could reach the general population. So you're right, it was the online course stuff. I started kind of just, I mean, I just spent hours and hours and hours watching webinars and reading blogs and learning about website construction and what's the importance of Pinterest, and kind of getting lost in that world. And that's when the blog started. I think around 2017, maybe. And we kind of, I think mostly I stepped into, because you were very much in the world of trainings and things like that, but stepped into, okay, let's take our stuff and let's break it down into bite-sized pieces and let's share it with the end users, the general population. And how do we create free and accessible information for them? And I think my Instagram was much of the same, but also was this sort of me developing a voice that we could use together, but also that I felt more sturdy in myself.
Well, I think that was a huge growing experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, just you weren't really in front of an audience, but you
I
were.
never. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So, and you had been, I mean, you did keynotes with me
Mm-hmm.
and you did keynotes on your own. And so
Mm-hmm.
you did a television show. So
Mm-hmm.
you didn't even talk about, but you went to acting camp and way back in the day, which it's probably served you
Maybe that's
well.
where my reels come from. I
your,
never actually
your,
thought about that.
your acting and your reels is like drawing on things you had when what you were 10 years old, maybe during the acting
Yeah.
camp. You tried
I was
out
a bit
for
longer. Yeah. Star
actually
Wars.
Star Wars part when Star Wars movie was
Mm-hmm.
coming out. That was like a big deal. And
That really didn't
so
work out for me.
you had a lot of things that I think have all like converged together to really help you to get launched in that confidence now that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, it took me a while. I know you're wrapping up that story, but it took me a while to figure out that I needed to do that. I remember on my internship sitting with a supervisor in our own personal supervision, and her saying, "Tell me about what it's like working with your dad." I'm like, "It's great. Like I just had nothing." And but really, Morgan, what's it like working with your dad? Just really trying to get in there, and kept kind of pushing it. And I wasn't ready at that point to face something that I had kind of done to myself, which is this worry or insecurity that I could kind of stand next to you versus kind of let you take the lead. And I think that maybe she saw maybe that could be a potential sort of thing, but I feel like it's just the part of the maturation process. And it happened with our relationship in like these dual roles. You mature as an adult when you kind of leave the home and all these things. And I had to mature into my role in our work together. And so Instagram was a big part of that for me.
well, I
Gave me a
know.
place. Yeah.
I mean, some people like hit success in their 20s, right? I mean, there's people that are just like musicians and all kinds of people that just are like phenomenal before they even, cross over into the 30 decade. But when it comes to anything about coaching and advising or consultants or a lot of the people in that field, and even authors that are going to be writing with a lot of depth and wisdom, it's usually kind of winding into your 40s before you are actually feel like you're writing from
Mm-hmm.
some experiential side of it all and not just writing about something. You're writing
Mm-hmm.
with meaning and feeling and reality behind it all, some history. And so I look at you now, you have 2 book deals, you have this Instagram, and we're rolling out this membership of our online video courses and doing this podcast. And all of this is feeling way more equally owned by you as it is by, things that I'm doing. And so I think that is also a part of just the aging process of a
Mm-hmm.
fine wine, as well as a fine coach and therapist. So and author.
This is a lot of fun. I feel like it would be really easy to do a number of podcasts with just stories and tales of our family or our relationship. But I even learned some new things about you and the Ram. I didn't know some of that stuff.
Hopefully I didn't reveal too much. It always sounds better where I hit the books and I developed this solely out of, but a lot of good ideas. You read and you fill your head with tons and tons of information, and then you let it germinate.
Mm-hmm.
And then it slowly starts moving around inside your head. And what a lot of times comes out is a reworking of all of that. And that's what I felt like the Ram was. So it felt like it was that germination process of several years of good information in my head. And it was starting to come out in a way
It's amazing.
That was, a good visual is what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really cool from this vantage point to think back to that story, because I didn't know that it happened in a counseling room, to think that on that day you sketched something that would impact the lives of millions. So it is your legacy. It's amazing to be a part of it.
Well, it's going to be in the structure of your book as well. So that's that's very cool.
That's true. Well, I hope that today's episode helped give you a glimpse into our relationship and working together. I get asked all the time, and I know that you've gotten asked so many times. So you work with your daughter, or you work with your dad? What's that like? So I hope today offered some clarity, and if nothing else, you were entertained by the stories of our lives. So thank you for being here.
I want to thank everybody too. And I can't tell you, Morgan, how wonderful it is. It is truly a father's, but probably any parent dream to be able to work in this kind of relationship with their own child, their own daughter. So thank you for being willing to be part of this and doing it together with such such inspiration and ownership and creativity of your own.
Oh, thank you. I feel just blessed to work with you. So, we'll get all sappy at the end. I've just really enjoyed working with you, and just know that it's immeasurable how much I've learned with you. So it's been amazing.
Thank you for tuning in. You can learn more about the Love Things content by hanging out with Dr. Morgan on Instagram at MyLoveThings, or visit our blog at mylovethinks.com.
And we're happy to offer an affordable subscription to the Love Things membership, where you will gain access to a library of videos and resources on a wide range of relationship topics. Also included are monthly live Q&As, where we answer relationship questions and discuss relevant relationship issues.
All this and more can be found on mylovethinks.com. And remember, the best relationships are those where you follow your heart without losing your mind.